Lukas Reichel finally breaks through for his first goal of the season, but the Blackhawks still wind up falling 4-2 to the Lightning. I'll go over my key takeaways from the loss, as well as the latest rumors surrounding Patrick Kane, as he's expected to make his decision in the next couple of days. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thank you all for making the show your very first listen. Here to start off your Friday, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2, or you can go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And also, just a quick reminder to please go and help your boy out by showing some support down low, by smashing that like button, commenting down below, and of course, subscribing to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. It won't cost you anything. It's 100% free, and it really does help me out tremendously. So please make sure to take care of that real quick. And you can also go and turn on those push notifications if you're wanting to get notified when the episode is uploaded each and every day. And today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks is sponsored by Game Time. Go and download the Game Time app right now and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps, and you'll get $20 off to the sporting events, comedy events, or theater events near you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. As always, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Not the best performance out of our Blackhawks last night as they fall 4-2 to the Tampa Bay Lightning at the United Center. The second meeting in the last 7 days between these two teams, and actually the final meeting between the Blackhawks and the Bolts here this season. But it certainly went different than the meeting down in Tampa did last Thursday, as the Blackhawks put up a bit of an offensive stinker. They mustered up a whopping 15 shots on goal. That's a season low. Only 9 of them came at 5-on-5. They were also outchanced 29-14 at even strength. And oh yeah, they only had 2 shots on goal during the final 20 minutes of action, and one of those came with 1 minute and 25 seconds left in the game. That's right, the Blackhawks had 1 shot on goal in the third period for the first 18 and a half minutes. And putting aside the scoreboard, if you were just unfamiliar with the situation that was going on in the game, the scoreboard was gone and you were just strictly focusing on what was going on out there on the ice, you most definitely would have liked the Tampa Bay Lightning were the ones that were trying to claw their way back in the third period and the ones who were down a goal, needing to get one late. But it was actually the Chicago Blackhawks. They just couldn't get any puck possession whatsoever. Tampa Bay Lightning really hounded them all night long. They were the ones that were stronger on the puck. And as the game wore on, it felt like the Blackhawks were kind of wearing out and were trapped in their defensive zone more and more and more. And the only reason this game was even close down the stretch, and the reason why the Blackhawks had an opportunity to tie this thing up late with the extra attacker out, was because Peter Mrazek once again did his thing in net. In the third period, it was all Lightning, and it really felt like with the way they played in that third frame, they could have pulled away for a 5-2, 6-2 type of victory. Peter Mrazek was the lone reason why the Hawks were able to stay alive and might just be the MVP for the Blackhawks through their first 14 games of the season. I'll be talking more about that here in just a second. But yeah, biggest takeaway was not much going on at all for the Blackhawks offense all night long. Even though they did find the back of the net twice, felt like this might be their worst offensive stinker of the season, and a very quiet night for the top line of Connor Bedard, Nick Foligno, and Philip Kurashev. Coming into this one, they had obviously been buzzing as of late. Bedard had back-to-back 2-goal performances, 7 total in his last 6 games. Nick Foligno had also been making the most of his promotion up to the top line with 4 assists in his 4 games coming into this one. And then Philip Kurashev has just been spectacular since returning from injury after missing those first 6 games. But that trio was held in check all night long and felt like even they didn't have much sustained offensive zone time. And when that's the case, when that trio is that empty and that absent for the Blackhawks, it's not going to bode very well for them in terms of the final result. Feels like they're not going to win many games this year, or Connor Bedard isn't an impact player. But those things are going to happen. There's going to be bumps in the road for the 18-year-old kid. They're not all going to be 2-goal performances with 4 points and stuff like that. But it did feel like veteran head coach John Cooper really had his team in check and keying in on Connor Bedard whenever he was out there on the ice, after seeing what he did to them in their building last Thursday, where he really took control of an NHL game for the first time and kind of spearheaded the Blackhawks 5-3 victory over the Bolts. They made sure not to give him much time and space at all out there last night. And yeah, might have been Connor Bedard's quietest NHL game here thus far in the first 14 contests of the season, and was one of the first times where it felt like he was an 18-year-old rookie out there on the ice. But another tough home loss for the Chicago Blackhawks I wanted to bring up as well. Still only one win at the United Center this season. That occurred when your boy was there a few weekends ago against the Florida Panthers. But it's been a little bit of an issue for the Hawks playing at the UC. Felt like their last couple of games there against the New Jersey Devils, they didn't cook up all that much. They just haven't really been giving fans all that much to cheer for, and that was more of the same last night. So that's certainly something they got to figure out, getting the fans into it, feeding off their energy and whatnot, because the fans on hand, deserved a little bit better than what they got last night. And for the Blackhawks to see how well they've played on the road so far this season against, some of the best teams in the NHL, you would expect them to fare better on home ice, but that just hasn't been the case thus far. That's something they seriously have to figure out down the stretches, how to play better in their own building, because one win through their first 5 games, I believe, at the UC just isn't going to cut it. All right, folks, coming up in just a moment, I will get into some of the positive takeaways from last night's game. Yes, there were still a couple, including Lukas Reichel finally breaking through for his first goal of the season. But first, I need to talk to you all. Oop, that's the wrong one. I need to talk to you all about Game Time. There's free shout out to Sleeper. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. And Game Time is the fast and easy way for you to buy all your tickets to sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And I personally have used Game Time for probably close to a decade now. When I was still back in high school going to the United Center to watch Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane, I was using Game Time. And also, whenever I am traveling to a different city and I'm wanting to go to a concert or a sporting event, Game Time has always been the reliable way for me to purchase my tickets. And I also love how they have views from all the seats in the venue, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app right now, because if you do, and if you go and create an account, then you'll get $20 off with your first purchase. Again, you can get $20 off to come see the generational talent that is Connor Bedard at the United Center this season. All you have to do, a couple of quick things: download the Game Time app, go and create an account, and then use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time. All right, back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I did want to get into my 3 stars and also some of my key takeaways from the Blackhawks 4-2 loss last night. And one thing I meant to do before I started recording this was pull up some stats here real quick, because my number 1 star of the game undoubtedly was Peter Mrazek. I already referenced it in segment 1, but he continues to just do his thing in net and is producing quality start after quality start after quality start. And again, it could have been 5-2, 6-2 easily for the Lightning with the push that they came with in the third period. Peter Mrazek was phenomenal all night long to at least give the Blackhawks some life late in the game. But despite the 4-4-0 record through his first 8 starts, it really feels like he's given the Blackhawks an opportunity to win all of them. And through his first 8 games, Mrazek still has a 2.86 goals against average and a .919 save percentage. Those are some pretty gosh darn impressive numbers, especially when you compare to what he did last year in his first season with the Blackhawks as the starter. He really has been the rock for them. And in my opinion, folks, Connor Bedard may have 13 points in his first 14 NHL games. And I know in a lot of their victories, he has been the difference maker. I still think Peter Mrazek has been the MVP of this Blackhawks team, even though he's only started a little more than half their games. Every time he's been in there, he's found a way to make it close. And in the games that he's won, he has been absolutely tremendous as well, and regularly has faced 40 or more shots from the opposing team, and has still found ways to come up with 36, 37 or more of them. So he has been tremendous in my mind, and a reason why the Blackhawks 5-9-0 record. I know that's not great, but he's a big part of why they are looking better than they did at this time last season. I do have some concerns about what this Blackhawks team would be if Peter Mrazek wasn't standing on his head, but hopefully he'll be able to keep this up. Because it seems like the Blackhawks are certainly going to need him. Maybe the front office doesn't want him playing this well, though, if they want one of those top draft picks. But for where Peter Mrazek is at in this point in his career, feels like he really needed to get off to a good start this year, and he's done exactly that. Again, in my opinion, he's been the MVP of the Blackhawks. Lukas Reichel is my second star of the game. Finally, Reichel gets his first goal of the season. Only took 14 games. Also added in 2 shots on goal. With 18 minutes and 28 seconds of time on ice. And we've been yelling from the heavens here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. I had NBC Sports Chicago Blackhawks insider Charlie Roumeliotis here on the show recently. We both expressed our desire to see Lukas Reichel at least get on that top power play unit because, man, he just needed something to kickstart him and something to get him going. And if they weren't going to bump him up on the top line with Bedard, it felt like the least that coach Luke Richardson could do was to give him an opportunity with the top power play unit. Just one power play chance into him getting on the top power play unit. He proceeds to go and score a beautiful redirect goal for his first tally of the season. I saw an interesting comment made by John Dietz on X after Reichel scored this goal. Is Richardson a genius for putting Reichel up on the top power play unit, or should this have been something that happened a little bit sooner? I'm on the latter. Like, this should have been something that happened after Game 6 or Game 7. The Blackhawks power play has been absolutely putrid, and there's no reason to have both Nick Foligno and Corey Perry on the top power play unit. I mean, come on. Those guys are ideally on Stanley Cup winning teams. They're bottom 6 pieces. Corey Perry's been great. Nick Foligno's been great. You don't need both of them on your top power play unit. Lukas Reichel needs to stay in that spot, and hopefully he can build off this and really this first goal kind of just opens the floodgates for him because he has shown some signs here as of late that he's been playing better hockey. I think he's deserving of that opportunity with the skill set that he has and the promising future that he brings to the table for the Blackhawks. He needs to be out there on the top power play unit the rest of the way. And then my third star of the game, Corey Perry, continues to also play very well for the Blackhawks and continues to strike his revenge against his former team. That's his 4th goal of the season and 2nd in as many games against the Tampa Bay Lightning this season. He also recorded a team-high 3 shots on goal, and that now gives him 9 points through his first 14 games as a member of the Chicago Blackhawks. Currently on a 52-point pace is Corey Perry, which is actually crazy to say. I don't think anyone anticipated him to be chipping in as much as he has been thus far offensively, but I thought he was one of the better Blackhawks forwards last night in a game where they really didn't muster up much offensively. I thought Perry was noticeable and did a lot of good work, and still knows, even though he doesn't have the best speed like he used to, still knows where to go, as good goal scorers do, to find those soft spots and to be able to bury in the back of the cage. So Mrazek was my number 1 star. Lukas Reichel was number 2. Peter Mrazek was number 1. Lukas Reichel number 2. Corey Perry was number 3. Some of my other takeaways that I had from last night's loss, Wyatt Kaiser, man, real tough night for him. 3 penalties, was responsible for all 6 penalty minutes that the Blackhawks accrued, other than Connor Murphy getting in a fight with Michael Eyssimont, which, by the way, Murphy should have hit him with a little standing guillotine. It would have been perfect there. But a real tough go of it for Wyatt Kaiser. 3 penalties, a couple of real bad turnovers trying to exit the defensive zone that led to extended shifts, which in turn lead to penalties. It's been a rocky ride for him thus far, and it feels like, yeah, there have been some shaky nights. What I do believe he's done a good job of, though, is not compounding those issues and not letting it turn into like a streak of 3 or 4 bad games in a row. It feels like whenever he's had a bad one, he's bounced back rather nicely, but it still does make you wonder if he could be needing some seasoning down in rock for a little bit. And that's one thing I've talked about with Kaiser, basically going back to the summer. I expected him to kind of get the Alex Vlasic treatment, despite how good he looked in training camp. I guess that's kind of why he ultimately made the NHL team out of camp. But I believed that he was going to go down to Rockford, play meaningful top 4 minutes down there in all situations to kind of ripen him up a little bit. And then, when the time's right, there's absolutely no rush. You bring him up next season if everything goes to plan. But look, I believe Kaiser's super talented. I just believe there could be some benefits for a guy like him going and playing in more meaningful situations rather than being a third pairing guy who's been stuck with Jared Tenorti a lot this year and Nikita Zaitsev, and last night Isaac Phillips, having two youngsters on the same pairing together. I just don't know if that's the best situation for Wyatt Kaiser right here, right now. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him end up in Rockford at some point in time if these struggles do continue. But the one thing I will say, Blackhawks fans, that's not going to be happening right now because Nikita Zaitsev is out till at least next week due to personal reasons. And Jared Tenorti is also on injured reserve at the moment. And because of that, the Blackhawks also had to recall defenseman Philip Ruse from the Rockford Ice Hogs, and he served as the 7th defenseman last night. So Kaiser to Rockford does seem like it could be in the cards down the road, but it's not going to be happening until at least one of Nikita Zaitsev or Jared Tenorti are able to return. I also thought the Blackhawks, other than Wyatt Kaiser, did a good job of staying out of the box last night. He was responsible, again, for all 3 penalties. But another game where the Blackhawks give up a power play goal that now makes 6 consecutive games. They've given up a goal to the opposing man advantage. And the special teams, even though they cashed in last night, the special teams really seems like it's starting to flip for the Blackhawks. The power play has not been good. And one thing that's been apparent about the man advantage too is how many odd man chances they've given up. I mean, come on. It feels like every game the Blackhawks are giving up a shorthanded breakaway or a shorthanded 2-on-1. I don't know what needs to change in that aspect, but it just has not been good enough. And it feels like power play is not able to even generate any momentum for this offense right now. So I think you got to keep Lukas Reichel out there, and I think you got to give Kevin Korchinski an opportunity on that top unit. I'm a Seth Jones truther. I'm a Seth Jones backer, as you can see by the jersey right there. He just hasn't been good enough offensively this season, and a lot of bad passes from him at the blue line. I think he's been good defensively this year and has been the Blackhawks' first or second best defenseman along with Alex Vlasic, but offensively, he has been dropping the ball. And I think maybe giving Korchinski an opportunity with the top unit could be a bit of a wake-up call for him. So that's one thing to keep in mind as the Blackhawks have a back-to-back this weekend. Will there be any tinkering with that top power play unit or anything? Because Seth Jones just needs to be better than he is on the offensive side of things right now. I mentioned with Corey Perry being my 3rd star of the game, I thought he was one of the better Blackhawks forwards in this one. The other 3 guys that stood out to me, all in the bottom 6 last night, were Jason Dickinson, Mackenzie Entwistle, and Boris Kachuk. I thought they were all spectacular. Kachuk was a physical presence and was forcing turnovers and made a couple of heads-up passes as well. Picked up the secondary assist on Corey Perry's goal. Mackenzie Entwistle was a loose cannon, man, using his speed and his strength and his size to kind of power his way to the front of the net. He had a couple of the better chances for the Hawks last night. And Jason Dickinson, man, he quietly has been chipping in offensively the last handful of games. I believe he now has 4 points in his last 4 contests. But a beautiful little redirect pass to give Corey Perry that yawning cage. I think the bottom 6 has been a pleasant surprise for the Blackhawks here. If they could just get that second line chipping in a little bit more offensively, I really do believe that would help kind of take this Blackhawks offense as a whole to another gear and help them kind of with their offensive struggles that they've been going through here as of late, other than Connor Bedard doing the heavy lifting. All right, there are my final takeaways from last night's woeful loss to the Bolts. Coming up in just a minute here, folks, I will get into the latest Patrick Kane updates and talk about the teams that he's rumored to be interested in at this point in time. But first, I need to talk to you all about FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. Again, that's $150 if your team wins outright. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel for a long time, there's no better time to get in on the action than right now, because football season, we're getting towards that midway point. We're actually well over the midway point now. What am I talking about? And FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. All you got to do is pick any team to win on the money line with a $5 bet. And if your team comes through, then you'll get $150 in bonus bets that you can use on anything from betting on point spreads to money lines, over-unders, player props, and much, much more. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, what I love about FanDuel is when you win, they pay you out instantly. There's no better place to bet on the NFL than FanDuel. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, an official partner of the National Football League. All right, back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Once again, please make sure to go and smash that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already. I got a lot of good stuff coming out here soon. I obviously just had a nice conversation with Charlie Roumeliotis from NBC Sports Chicago. I was also very fortunate to have been joined yesterday by Blackhawks defenseman prospect Ethan Del Mastro, baby, one of my favorites in the entire organization. Ethan was super awesome. Talked to him about his last year of juniors, winning his 3rd gold medal this past winter, and how things have been going for him down in Rockford as he has 10 professional games under his belt. That's going to be coming out soon. Make sure to keep your peepers peeled for that. And also make sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram as well. Some really important stuff is going to be going down there over the weekend that you're not going to want to miss out on. So please make sure to go do all of that here real quick. All right, throwing that to the side. Segment 3, tons of Patrick Kane rumors have been swirling over the last couple of weeks, folks. But the latest report that just came out this morning from Emily Kaplan states that Kane's decision, it sounds like it's going to be coming soon. And quite honestly, I think it could be happening by Sunday or Monday. I fully expect it to be happening before, is Thanksgiving next week, man? I'm so out of the loop here. Thanksgiving is next week. Holy cow, right? Now I'm going to pull up my calendar to make sure I'm not being a huge potato, because if you follow me on social media, I can be a potato sometimes. Yes, next Thursday is Thanksgiving. I fully expect the Kane decision to be made by then. And, you know, we've heard for the last couple of months from him and his agent, Pat Brisson, that November was going to be the time where he was going to make his decision. So, yeah, it sounds like we're getting into the nitty-gritty here in terms of where Patrick Kane will be calling his next home. And I definitely wanted to go through, there's plenty of teams for good reason that are obviously interested suitors in the Patrick Kane sweepstakes, but I want to go through them all and talk about which ones I feel are realistic for number 88, Patty Kane. First and foremost, though, according to this report from Emily Kaplan, it seemed like Patrick Kane wanted to go back to New York. And quite honestly, Blackhawks fans, that was just the one spot. I thought he was going back. I just thought it made too much sense. Being a New Yorker, it's a spot close to his family, close to his home. They're playing winning hockey. It just made too much sense. So for what it's worth, that's where I thought Patrick Kane was going to go. And it sounds like that's where he wanted to go as well. But ultimately, Rangers general manager Chris Drury just couldn't find a way to make the cap situation work, and ultimately has pulled out of the Patrick Kane sweepstakes. So we know he will not be going back to the New York Rangers. And here are the teams that supposedly are showing interest in Kane at this point in time: the Buffalo Sabres, the Detroit Red Wings, Dallas Stars, Toronto Maple Leafs, Colorado Avalanche, Tampa Bay Lightning, Carolina Hurricanes, and Florida Panthers. Those are all the teams that have been reportedly showing interest, and I probably expect there are more teams that are at least kind of throwing some extension lines out there to Kane to see if he would have any interest as well. But starting with the Buffalo Sabres, there have been a lot of rumors about the Sabres team, with Kaner being a Buffalo native. One thing I will say, though, they're off to kind of a shaky 7-8-1 start. Tage Thompson is now going to be out for an extended period of time. The one thing I do think they have going for them is they have a lot of cap space, and they do have a seemingly bright future ahead of them. So if Patrick Kane is wanting to go somewhere and maybe sign a 2-year contract, if he's wanting contract security, I think that's the deal he's going to sign. I don't think it's going to be 3 years. It's going to be an incentive-based 2-year contract if he's wanting security. That's the one thing I will say is working for Buffalo. Bright future, lots of cap space. I still don't think they're ready to win right here, right now, though. And it feels like while Patrick Kane might want security after getting up and moving from Chicago to New York, and I'm sure that was a little tough on his family, and PK the third, I'm sure he wants to win, baby. I mean, he hasn't even sniffed it since 2015, and I just don't know if that's going to be happening with the Buffalo Sabres in the next couple of years. So to me, I know Buffalo is intriguing. I don't think it's number one on my list. The Detroit Red Wings, folks, I hate to say it, I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of, and if you're listening to this show, you've probably heard me say many times that I don't think it fits in terms of what Patrick Kane wants right now. But the issue here is all the teams who want to go and win this year, they don't have any money. They don't have any money. I'll jump the Detroit Red Wings here. I'll get into some of the big boy teams. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they're off to an 8-5-2 start. There have been some recent rumors. Kane's been training up in Toronto. He met with the Maple Leafs first, supposedly has a good relationship with Austin Matthews, a fellow American. The problem with the Maple Leafs is they legit have no money. They have no money, and quite honestly, they need defensive help before they go and add another forward, in my opinion. So I don't see that happening. The Colorado Avalanche, yeah, they're intriguing. They have legit $0. They're going to have to make some crazy moves in order to fit Patrick Kane in. Same with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They can barely put out a roster on the ice right now because of their cap situations. Yes, they're intriguing because they have some talent, and Vasilevsky is coming back, and they're seemingly in it year after year. I don't know how it's going to work financially. The Carolina Hurricanes are an interesting team because they do have some cap flexibility, and it feels like they'll be a team where if Kane signs a multi-year deal, he'll be at least confident that he's going to get a crack at contending for the next couple of years. So quite honestly, folks, I think Carolina is number one in terms of these teams that are interested. I think Carolina makes the most sense, and I don't like it because I've never been a Carolina Hurricanes fan. I think that's the best spot for Patrick Kane, and it's not terribly far away from home. Yes, it is still a little bit of a travel. I still think Carolina is a really good spot. The Florida Panthers are intriguing too because they're Stanley Cup contenders. They don't have much money though, and I will say that's a little bit of a far destination for Patrick Kane. So out of these teams, I'm for sure Xing out Tampa Bay. I'm for sure Xing out Colorado. Hell, I'm Xing out Toronto as well. Dallas, they don't have any money either. It's such a big issue for Patrick Kane right now is how are these teams actually going to fit him in who can compete right here, right now? Detroit can kind of do that. They have $4.4 million in cap space at this point in time. A little bit of a tough stretch as of late. They're now 8-5-3 on the season. But with Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, Mo Seider, it feels like it could be a potential best of both worlds for Patrick Kane. Do I think the Detroit Red Wings are ready to win a Stanley Cup this year or even next year? No. And that might be the gripe with Patrick Kane. But compared to some of these other teams who don't have money, I'd rather go to Detroit than Buffalo if it were up to me. So I think out of these teams interested, I think Carolina is like the most perfect type of destination for Patrick Kane where they can offer him security and an opportunity to win. And it's not terribly far away from home. Detroit's kind of in that same boat too. Not terribly far away from home for Patrick Kane. The one team that's always just kind of stood out to me, man, they don't seem to be in the rumors here, and maybe they're not in the running whatsoever. The New Jersey Devils feel like they make a lot of sense for Patrick Kane. They have a little bit of money, not a ton, but they're obviously a very intriguing team with Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Luke Hughes, all the high-power offensive players. Jesper Bratt's taking these next steps. I mean, there's a lot to like with Patrick Kane, or for Patrick Kane with the New Jersey Devils, but I haven't seen them being involved in rumors thus far. But it's ultimately going to come up to two things, Blackhawks fans. Does Kane want to win now, or does he want security and to go somewhere on a 2-year deal? And does he care about the distance that he has to travel for his family? Those are the things that are going to be the big impact players here. In my opinion, I think Carolina and Detroit are the two most likely situations for Patrick Kane. From afar, I think New Jersey makes too much sense, but out of these teams that I've just broken down based on financial fit and in terms of what Patrick Kane wants, I think Carolina or Detroit could be the two situations for showtime. All right, folks, I think that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcasts, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, and you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2, or you can check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, it's going to do it here for the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.